let's unpack this. Um, you interact with your family all the time, right? Like, you probably text them, call them on the weekends, maybe you even share a house with them.
Yeah, of course. It's an everyday thing.
But have you ever stopped to, analyze the specific linguistic tools you use to describe them?
Oh, most people definitely haven't.
Right. I mean, have you ever thought about the actual words that come out of your mouth when you try to explain your family dynamics to a complete stranger?
It's one of those things that is just so completely embedded in our daily lives. Like, we become entirely blind to the architecture of our own speech.
Exactly.
We just use the vocabulary without ever questioning the psychological weight those words actually carry.
And that's exactly what today's deep dive is all about. We're using a pretty surprising tool to examine this. We are pulling from an educational audio transcript from the Speak English podcast.
Which is such a fascinating source to use for this.
It really is. Specifically, it's a lesson focused on family vocabulary and conversation. And, well, you might be wondering why we are looking at an English language learning source.
It seems a bit counterintuitive at first, yeah.
Right, but when you strip English down to its bare conversational studs for a non-native speaker, it acts as this incredible mirror. It reveals some bizarre, fascinating psychological quirks about how we view, hierarchy, connection, and social structure.
Well, yeah, because when you look at language materials designed for learners, you see the machinery of the language laid completely bare.
Yeah.
The way a culture talks about family reveals its fundamental values. Like, you can track exactly where a society places its emotional emphasis just by looking at the words they invented.
Oh, for sure.
And more importantly, the words they never bothered to invent.
That is such a good point. So to really understand this machinery, we have to begin at the root, right? The source material kicks off with the immediate family, so parents, siblings, and
The
children.
core unit.
Exactly. And the two speakers in the audio, a male and a female, they give us a window into their own structures. Like, the male speaker notes he comes from a family of 5.
Right.
And he casually drops the fact that his parents have been married for an impressive 30 years.
Which, that detail establishes a very stable traditional baseline for his immediate family structure.
Yeah, it really sets the stage.
It does. It sets the stage for his specific placement within that ecosystem, which he explains right after.
Right. He says he is the classic middle child. He's wedged between 2 older sisters and a younger brother.
A very specific dynamic.
Very. And he describes his older sisters as being like second mothers to him growing up. But with his younger brother, he notes they are incredibly close because they grew up together and share like this massive bank of memories.
Yeah, he explicitly credits being stuck in the middle of this dynamic as the reason he learned how to compromise.
Which is so typical of the middle child, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And notice how his vocabulary directly maps onto birth order theory. Like, the words we use, older, younger, middle, perfect, they are not just biological markers of time.
What do you mean?
Well, they are deep psychological mandates. The middle child frequently develops into the mediator because they lack the absolute authority of the eldest and, the inherent coddling of the youngest.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they have to negotiate for everything.
Exactly. They have to negotiate for resources and attention. And his description of his older sisters as second mothers, that is a perfect illustration of how immediate family language often borrows from parental language.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, he is using linguistic tools to assign caregiving authority to a sibling unit.
And that structural reality makes a later moment in the transcript incredibly fascinating to me. It's a subtle slip, but it completely exposes how our brains categorize these roles.
Oh, the role play section.
Yes. Early in the natural conversation, the female speaker is talking about her real life. She clearly states she has one younger sister, and they have a 2-year age gap. And she describes them as being more like best friends.
Which is a very common dynamic for siblings close in age. The proximity really fosters that peer-like companionship.
Yeah, but later on, the host decided to do a role-play exercise to practice introducing family at a party.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment they switch into role-play mode, her script completely flips.
It really does.
She introduces herself as the youngest of 2 and says she has an older sister. And the male speaker, who we know has 2 older sisters and a younger brother, suddenly role-plays that it's just him and 2 sisters.
They completely abandoned their real biographies the second the cognitive load increased.
I love that framing. Cognitive load. Why does the brain do that, though? I mean, they're fluent speakers. They know their own lives.
Right.
But it's almost like they reached for a default structural archetype instead of the truth.
Well, when you move from natural recall into an artificial task like an educational role play, your brain instinctively seeks efficiency.
Makes sense.
It drops the nuanced reality of your actual life and reaches for the simplest structural archetypes available in your culture. So in her case, she defaulted to the younger sibling looking up to an older sister dynamic.
Wow.
It just shows that these familial roles are essentially prepackaged scripts resting just beneath the surface of our consciousness.
But this reliance on prepackaged scripts, it actually makes me question the English language itself.
How so?
Take the word siblings. The source defines it as a combined term for brothers and sisters. Why do we even have a vague umbrella term like that?
Oh, right.
Because I know there are plenty of languages where you can't just say sibling. You have to specify if it's an older brother or a younger sister every single time you speak.
Yes, and this is a fundamental difference in linguistic philosophy. In many languages, particularly across Asia, like Mandarin, Japanese, or Korean, the language forces you to establish the social hierarchy immediately.
You literally can't hide it.
You cannot hide the power dynamic. The specific word you use instantly declares rank, age, and gender. And that dictates the level of respect required in the interaction.
But English completely bypasses that.
Wow.
Like you can just say, I have 3 siblings and just walk away.
Exactly.
You leave the listener completely in the dark about who is in charge.
Right, because English prioritizes grouping and efficiency over explicit hierarchy.
In closing,
The word siblings allows you to bundle the concept of shared parentage without constantly reinforcing rank. It gives the speaker the option to remain ambiguous.
that's about flexibility.
Yeah, but because English doesn't bake the hierarchy into a single noun, we rely heavily on descriptive phrases like the age gap, which is a term they highlight in the source.
Right, so we had to manually add the context back in.
Precisely. A 2-year age gap often creates that best friend alliance, whereas a 10-year age gap might create that second mother dynamic we talked about.
Ah, I see.
Because our nouns are vague, we use phrases about time and space to map out our psychological alliances.
But, this linguistic grouping really only works when everyone is operating in the same physical space, though.
That's true.
As we follow the source material, the conversation shifts from the family you grew up with to the family as it exists when you're an adult. And the key phrase they introduce to describe this is spread out.
The visual metaphor of that phrase is really striking.
It is.
It's like water hitting a pane of glass and just dispersing in different directions.
Yeah, and the male speaker notes that his family is entirely spread out, meaning they live in different cities or countries. And the female speaker's reality mirrors this perfectly.
Right, she moved away.
Yeah, she moved out years ago for work. She physically occupies the same room as her parents maybe twice a year. But she insists they stay in touch because they do a video call every week. I just can't help but notice how bizarre it is that we use a highly tactile word touch for the most detached digital form of communication.
Well, you are hitting on a massive historical shift in human behavior there. Yeah. For thousands of years of human history, staying in touch meant exactly that. It meant tactile physical proximity.
Oh, right, because you had to be near them.
Exactly. You lived in the same village, you shared the same hearth, you occupied the same physical space. Emotional closeness was inextricably linked to geographical closeness.
So if you left...
If someone moved 100 miles away, the relationship naturally degraded.
See, I always picture the modern spread-out family like a satellite network.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
You have these distinct entities in orbit.
Right.
They're physically miles apart in the cold vacuum of space, but they're constantly pinging each other.
Yes.
A text message here, a meme there, a Sunday video call. They have to keep firing off these digital pings to maintain the orbit, or they just drift off into deep space.
And technology has allowed us to completely divorce emotional intimacy from geography.
It really has.
The phrase "stay in touch" survived, but the behavior defining it mutated. Like, you can have a sibling living on another continent, and because of that constant satellite pinging you described, you might be more intimately involved in the minutia of their daily life than you are with the neighbor who lives 10 feet from your front door.
That is wild. The vocabulary of the village survived the death of the village.
That's a poetic way to put it, yeah.
And once you map out that immediate digitally connected family, you inevitably bump into the outer orbits of the family tree. the extended family.
Which introduces an entirely different set of linguistic rules.
Oh, absolutely. The source breaks down the extended family as grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins,
Yeah.
and they also bring in the in-laws.
Right, the family you acquire through marriage, like a mother-in-law.
I have to admit, acquiring in-laws always reminds me of a hostile corporate merger.
Okay, I am very curious how you map a corporate merger onto a marriage.
Just think about the mechanics of it. You have two completely established entities, two families, each with their own CEO, their own ingrained company culture, their own inside jokes, and their own rigid protocols for how holidays are executed.
Okay, I'm following you.
Then, boom, a marriage happens. The companies merge overnight. Now you have all these people who didn't interview with each other suddenly forced to share a boardroom at Thanksgiving. You have to navigate a totally new HR department.
It is a terrifyingly accurate analogy, honestly,
Right.
because you are adopting a parallel social structure overnight. And even the linguistic term in-law is fascinating.
Oh, how so?
Well, it denotes a legal obligation rather than a blood tie or an emotional bond.
Oh, wow, yeah.
It is a surprisingly cold, contractual way to describe family members.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And speaking of subtle linguistic distinctions, the source touches on the difference between saying an older sister and an elder sister.
Ah, yes.
They note that elder is utilized heavily in British English to convey seniority. Like older just feels like a chronological fact, but elder sounds like you're consulting a village chieftain.
Yeah, elder carries a connotation of respect, authority, and lineage that older simply does not possess.
But I want to get to my absolute biggest point of confusion with English family terms.
Okay, what is it?
The speakers bring up a major stumbling block for non-native learners. The word cousin is entirely gender neutral.
Yes, it is.
There's no specific single word for a male cousin or a female cousin. I was looking at this and realized it feels incredibly lazy compared to other languages.
Lazy.
Yeah. Why do we just dump everyone into one giant linguistic bucket labeled cousins?
Well, anthropologists actually classify this under what is called the Eskimo kinship system.
Wait, calling it the Eskimo system sounds a bit, dated.
It is a legacy anthropological term, but the structural concept remains the gold standard for analyzing English kinship.
Okay, what does it mean?
The core feature of this system is that it draws a massive, heavy boundary around the nuclear family. Mother, father, brother, sister. These get highly specific, unique terms.
Right, they're the VIPs.
Exactly. But the moment you step outside that nuclear core, the language starts lumping people together based purely on their generational distance from you.
So a cousin is just anyone who shares a grandparent but isn't my sibling.
Exactly. It doesn't matter if they are male, female, older than you, younger than you, or whether they are on your mother's side or your father's side.
None of that matters.
To an English speaker, those details are secondary. But to a learner coming from a descriptive kinship system like the Sudanese system, where you might have a distinct word for, say, mother's older brother's daughter.
That is so specific.
It is. And to them, the English word cousin feels like a massive loss of vital information.
It feels like we use our grammar to tell people they aren't that important.
That's one interpretation.
Yeah, like we were saying, you are in the outer orbit. The details of your specific identity don't matter enough to warrant a unique noun.
It really reflects the historical economic reality of English-speaking cultures.
How so?
The nuclear family became the primary unit of survival and commerce, prioritizing that core over the extended tribe. So the further away a relative gets from that nuclear center, the less linguistic energy we expend on them.
Wow. We quite literally use our vocabulary to draw boundaries around who we care about most.
We do.
So we've broken down the cast of characters, the physical geography of the modern family, and the weird buckets we dump our extended relatives into. The final step the source material tackles is how we actually deploy these words in the real world.
Right, the mechanics of fluency.
Exactly.
Because vocabulary divorced from application is just trivia.
Totally. The source introduces the phrase getting along, meaning, to have a good relationship. But notice the spatial metaphor buried in that phrase,
Yeah.
getting along.
Oh, moving along a line.
Yeah. We talk about relationships as if they are physical paths, we're traveling together, moving alongside someone without colliding. The male speaker notes that while his siblings fought constantly as kids, they get along really well now.
It highlights that relationships, much like the language used to describe them, are dynamic states of being, not static achievements.
To help the learner practice, the source poses 3 diagnostic questions. How many people are in your family? Are you the oldest, youngest, or in the middle? And who are you closest to and why?
Good practical exercises.
But the real insight comes from the female speaker's underlying philosophy. She explicitly says listening is important, but speaking is what makes the language stick.
Yes.
They urge the listener to physically pause the audio and speak their answers out loud.
Which touches on a fundamental mechanism of neuroscience.
I always think about this like the difference between reading sheet music and actually playing the piano.
I love that analogy.
Like, I can read the notes. I can intellectually understand the tempo, the dynamics, and the theory behind the chord progression. But knowing the theory doesn't mean my fingers know how to hit the keys in time.
Right. Knowing isn't doing.
Exactly. I am not making music until I physically press the keys and create the sound.
That is a perfect encapsulation of retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice.
Yeah. Whether you are an English learner trying to master the phrase stay in touch, an executive prepping for a high-stakes presentation, or just someone trying to remember a fascinating fact you read, passive absorption is fragile.
Yeah, it just fades away.
When you only listen, the information sits in your short-term working memory. You recognize the pattern, but you haven't generated the pattern.
The knowledge is just renting space in your head.
Exactly. Generating the pattern, speak a thought out loud,
I know.
trying to explain the Eskimo kinship system to a friend, or answering those diagnostic questions, it forces your brain to retrieve the information, structure it logically, and physically output it.
It makes it real.
It creates neural friction. It forces your brain to build the actual synaptic pathways required to convert passive information into usable knowledge. Speaking requires ownership of the idea.
You have to own it to use it. If you don't speak it, you don't actually know it.
Absolutely.
Well, let's recap the journey we've taken through this surprisingly profound language lesson. We started at the root with the immediate family, seeing how terms like middle child reveal deep psychological mandates.
And how our brains instinctively reach for structural archetypes over reality when we're put on the spot.
Yeah. Then we examined the physical geography of the modern family, exploring how the spatial metaphor of being spread out forced us to evolve the tactile concept of staying in touch into a digital satellite network.
Divorcing emotional intimacy from physical proximity entirely.
Right. We survived the corporate merger of acquiring in-laws and unpacked the Eskimo kinship system, realizing that the giant gender-neutral bucket we call cousins is actually a linguistic boundary protecting the nuclear core.
A protective linguistic wall.
Exactly. And finally, we locked in the absolute necessity of neural friction. You cannot just read the sheet music. You have to play the instrument. You have to speak to make knowledge stick.
Because the tools we use to speak about our families are the very tools that limit or expand our understanding of them.
Which brings us back to a quote from the male speaker in the source family really shapes who we become.
It really does.
Mastering this vocabulary doesn't just help a non-native speaker survive small talk.
Right.
It gives all of us the exact tools needed to accurately share our personal history with the world.
Very true.
But I want to leave you with one final intriguing question to mull over on your own. The source asks who you are closest to in your family. But consider this. How does the language you speak fundamentally limit or expand the way you categorize the people you love most? If English suddenly adopted 20 different, highly specific words for cousin based on their exact age, gender, and which side of the family they were on, would it change the way you interact with your extended family?
That is a fascinating thought experiment.
Right. Would having a specific, unique noun for that person force you to be closer to them? Think about that the next time you jump on a video call to stay in touch. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the words you use every day.